Prototype downhill bikes at the World Cups is a perfectly normal thing. But this really takes the biscuit. And do not get me started on that thing. The Aon Racing team partnered with a Swiss manufacturer, Gamux, and they were one of the first teams to go all in on gearbox downhill bikes. There is a lot going on there, so I had to get some answers. Reese, look, you're a man that's not afraid to try new things and mix it up, starting your own team, belt drive, gearbox, electronic gears, and now this construction. First of all, does it have a name?
It doesn't have a name yet, no. I guess like subframe is what it's replacing. So, creating. It's bikes don't have a subframe, nowhere to like clamp with your legs or a rear mudguard. So it's kind of blurring the line, I guess, between a seat tube and a subframe. But yeah, I haven't named it yet, but we'll get there.
What is it for?
It's basically so I can squeeze my legs on the bike, my knees in this case, and hold the bike from side to side chassis movement and also forward and back. It's slightly flared out wider than the seat. So if the bike wants to pitch forward and I squeeze with my knees, then that prevents the bike actually from pitching any further forwards. It takes a little bit of getting used to. When I first put it on, I actually didn't really notice it. And then when I remembered it was there and applied the force with my knees to the seat, I was like, okay, right, that's kind of what it does. So,
did Big Will make it?
Big Will definitely helped me make it. Big Will being my dad. Basically I think it was Wednesday afternoon before Lake Placid. I was at home for, what did we have, 4 or 5 days? And I basically woke up in the morning and was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go and make this and find out. Like, I've had it in my mind for a long time. The only part he actually done was the welding. The welding was very difficult because the 3mm aluminium plate that we used heats up and melts a lot faster than the Hope seat clamp. So it's actually a very technical weld. Yes, we should have had countersink bolts. I didn't overlook that. It's just we have knee pads on, so these bolts don't bother me. And also it was a lot of extra time and a bit more money to create a countersink look when really I just wanted to see if the idea would actually work. So it's a bit Frankenstein for a reason. I think it looks agricultural and kind of cool, you know.
Have you made contact with any undesirable parts yet?
I haven't, no. In a sense, it limits that from happening as much because you've got something to squeeze before it all goes wrong, if you know what I mean. Like normally if you lose a foot, the first thing you do is try and sit down and squeeze with your legs to hold something. It's certainly me anyway, like, and you have a lot more to hold. Your inner thighs get a better grip. Like, for sure there's going to be, there's a world where I can go between the tyre and the back of this and it won't be pretty. I think as long as my manhood is in the middle, hopefully it'll be okay. But I'm not really worried about that. After the slice I had on my knee this year, like when the sport has a danger factor so high, this doesn't really add much more to it. What's another 1%? You know, I'm not really that fussed about that. It'll be what it'll be when it happens.
What does Pascal reckon to it?
I only found out about this a couple of days ago, but he wasn't happy. It doesn't match his sleek look with the rest of the bike, so I think that maybe upset him a little bit. And also he just couldn't really understand how that would be like required or beneficial. And then when he, I think, rode the bike around with it on, he kind of had the, oh wait a minute, I can maybe see how that would work. But I guess it's maybe rider technique dependent, like Jackson Goldstone, for example, and maybe like a Matt Walker. Those guys ride with their knees like really quite wide and away from the bike, so they would probably look at this and go, what is the point? But somebody like a Max Alrin or Asa Vermette or those guys who squeeze the bike a lot and keep their knees together all of the time, they replied to me almost straight away. Loris Vergy was another one who were like, okay, I can see what you're trying to do there, I can see how that would work.
So you switched to flats mid-season, but you're now back on clips. Is it track dependent, injury dependent, or is it just like your current vibes?
Yeah, it's a bit of a vibe. I think I've read a couple of comments on certain platforms saying that like, oh, he's just doing it to be different. But no, there's a purpose for everything I do. It's not just like, I want to do really well. I'm not going to like handicap myself just to try and, you know, be different over a weekend. It's like I've put flats on when they felt right for me and when it was working for me, just to give me a little bit of confidence. And then yeah, I hurt my shoulder earlier in the year, and I was kind of struggling to hold on. And with flat pedals at this level, you really need to have good technique. You need to be squeezing the bike and dropping the heels all of the time. And it was actually because of flat pedals that I came up with this idea. And then funnily enough, I've ended up using this with clip pedals. The reality is the shoes that I'm wearing for flats are really heavy, and flying to these 2 races, I could only bring 2 pairs of shoes with me, you know, so the flat pedals got the boot basically for these 2 races.
Finally, what are your feelings going into this final race?
The result last weekend for me at Lake Placid, a 19th, that's where I wanted to be leaving Andorra, qualified at Andorra, but didn't really have that great a race run. So in the top 20 is where I wanted to be mid-season, and then those injuries kind of caught up with me. And honestly, my season was done. I thought when I had surgery, I wouldn't even be racing at this race. So the fact I was P19 last week and only a second off of a top 15 and knocking on the door of a top 10 was kind of mind-blowing. So for this race, honestly, I'm hunting that top 10. I go really well at Mont Sainte Anne. I've always really liked the track here. It suits me and it really suits our bike. So
thanks for the insight, Reese. Appreciate your time, you madman. And now I think we've got Gamux engineer Pascal, as well as Henry Kerr, the rider, to talk about that new prototype. Pascal, before we look at the new bike, I heard you immediately fell in love with Reese's new modification, yeah?
Well, the thing is, like, you don't know if it's worth it until you tried it and you have rider feedback. No matter how weird it might look like, at the end of the day, if it benefits the rider's feel on the bike and his ability to charge, then it's worth it. I wasn't a big fan originally, but I get where he's coming from. And then last week just proved the fact that he's actually using it the way he's intended to use. That puts me in a very cool space where I get to fiddle around and try to optimize an original idea that Reese had. It's cool to have a group with Henry and Reese that are very technically minded in order to push the product and the performance of our bikes forward.
So you came round to it in the end, cool. So this is the new prototype that Henry Kerr is running this year. Can you give us a quick rundown of the main physical differences?
The real important thing for us was and still is, like, to keep working on stiffness, like whether it's lateral or horizontal, whatever, like in any direction. So in order to modify mainly front triangle stiffness, we went with this new design that's obviously missing a top and a down tube. I can't go into all the specific details, but basically the new layout allows us to modify torsional or directional stiffness independent from each other. We just tried to make the bike maybe a bit less peaky. Like the Sego is very, very, very good in a couple of scenarios, and it's not that great in some limited other scenarios. So we basically tried to flatten the performance curve, if you will, between like the extreme scenarios.
Henry, you're the one riding this beast. How does it feel?
I did the one day riding it, and then we were like, okay, we're racing at a World Cup, lens are how it is. So yeah, I was pretty sold, to be honest. I mean, once I went onto it, I was like, there's no way I can now go back to the old one, having known what we have here. Well, I mean, the Gamux itself is a pretty forgiving bike. Like, you can kind of just aim it where you want to go, and it just goes. Like, you kind of have so much feel when it comes to it, and you get away with so much. You still have all of that properties, but then when you really get up to pace and you start smashing holes and stuff, it just like, it all just holds up, and so you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get the forgiveness, but then you also get like the support and the accuracy when you're like plowing real rough stuff.
You've got those longer travel Dorados on the front. What's the travel on them, and was it your idea?
I wanted to know that if you had more travel and the bike was more capable, would you just brake less? Because I felt a lot of the time the only reason you're braking is either for a lack of traction or because you'll fold in half if you hit a bump at a certain speed. You know, like you have to slow down in order for you or the bike to be able to get through it composed. So, yeah, my concept is more travel better, and Manitou were super helpful, and we like the idea of this, we like the sound of it.
What do you see as the main benefit of having more travel, and is there a trade-off?
Let's make a scenario. You have a 250 mil bike that has 250 mil travel in the rear. You're less likely going to use all of the 250 mils, but you can kind of choose which segment in the travel you want to use. Let's say you want to use 200, so you can move it up and down 50 mil and change the dynamic ride height according to track demand, steepness, etc. So for us, this is probably the main benefit to having more travel. But then it's also getting increasingly difficult to make sure the shock tunes and the balance of the bike is right, because more travel means also more chassis movement, so there's more space to, sorry for my French, up.
Henry, any tweaks for M.S.A?
Obviously, not rode this bike that much, so we've not done much testing on like the likes of like Fort William or anything that's kind of similar to like the rocky terrain of Mont Sainte Anne. So honestly, I think we're going to start with where we left off in Lake Placid, because that was really like a good step in the right direction. So
awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Pascal, Henry and Reese. Love what you guys are doing at the Aon team. Good luck for the weekend. And viewers at home, if you've got any questions about the new kit over at Aon, let us know in the comments and stay tuned for an exciting video that I'm cooking up, which will drop tomorrow. Bye.